When I saw this movie when it first came out, I was not the biggest fan of it, but I thought now with this review channel and with Dune Part 2 coming out, this would be a perfect time for me to rewatch the movie, reassess it, see how it holds up. Do I think that this is a good movie? We're gonna talk about all of that right now. What's going on, you guys? It's Jonathan Carter, and today we are going to be talking about Dune Part 1. The plot of Dune Part 1 follows two houses as they fight over one planet for a substance that will help sustain human life. So let's kick this off with the positives. The main thing I want to talk about here are the visuals of this film. I don't think I've seen a movie that looks better than this film visually. The design of spaceships, the special effects in space, the war scenes, the aesthetic of this film is far and above any other movie I have seen. Just from scenes in the deserts, especially with the giant sandworms, the 3 or 4 scenes that the sandworm appears in. Those are such tense moments in this film, and that is just propelled by the movie's visual effects. And for that, I am super excited to see Dune Part 2 in IMAX next weekend. Another big thing I want to talk about here is the story building. And this is the most expansive, dense story building I have seen in a film, just like in the visuals. It's uncomparable with any other movie, in my opinion. Maybe some story world building kind of like Game of Thrones, but except over 8 seasons with a terrible last season. This movie is 2.5 hours long, so they really have to cover a lot of ground at the beginning. But a positive here is the lore of the movie, is the world. It is very intriguing, and it kind of hooked me in that right at the beginning. Moving into the mixed category here, a big thing I want to talk about is the acting. There isn't a bad actor in this film, and no actor's doing a bad job, but especially in the latter half of the movie, scenes just started to feel really weak. Like Timothée Chalamet delivered some pretty flat lines, and same with Rebecca Ferguson, which it just felt like a very big shift from the beginning of the film and where it ends up in the latter half. Once you kind of get into the second half of the movie, the world building almost starts to bog the movie down just from its own weight. It feels like this movie has to cover so much ground, and even though the movie has a 2.5 hour runtime, it just feels like it just needs to get to the next thing, get to the next thing, get to the next thing, and it never really stops to let the audience sit in anything. Bringing us into the negatives here, the pacing. The pacing of this film. This movie is the biggest dip in quality I've seen in a film. This is a film of many firsts for me. First kind of movie with these amazing visuals, first kind of movie with this amazing world, plot building, and then also first movie with such a fall off plot-wise. There is a big plot piece here that happens in the middle of the movie. If you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil it, but if you have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then once you move past that middle, that big point in the film, everything just starts to dip in pacing and how intriguing the film is. And I really had to make myself focus in the latter half of this film and keep snapping my attention back into the movie, because I could my mind just wanted to wander. And the first half of the film was not like that. I was set from the get-go in this movie, and then it just like kind of fell apart there getting into the last half of the film. And that is my biggest issue with this movie. Not only does the movie not properly use its runtime, it also feels like a significant part 1 of a part 2. And I feel like purposely there were storylines that were not wrapped up here because they wanted to say, oh wait, but this is just part 1 of part 2. And like, I understand that, end the movie on a cliffhanger. This would not be the first movie to do that. This would not be the first story, in any medium to do that. But also don't hold back plot points from being complete just because it's a part 1 of a part 2. So there's a fine line there to walk, and I feel like this movie takes advantage of the part 1 title. With all that being said, I know I talked more here about the negatives than I did the positives of this film. I do still enjoy this movie, and I definitely enjoyed it more than when I first saw it when this movie came out. I was a lot more negative on this movie when I first saw it. I went into this one with a more open mind this time, but it just, because the movie starts so well and it looks so visually amazing and you have this standout cast here, it just puts the movie up so much higher when you start to see it fall. It just makes those negative aspects of the film so much more apparent because of how good the beginning of the movie is. So I'm still going to see Dune Part 2. I'm still going to go into Dune Part 2 with an open mind. I hope that I enjoy it. I've heard some very good first reactions about it. Also, little side note here, before the end of this video, this is a little spoiler section. Is Lady Jessica's evil, right? Like, she totally has to be evil. We'll see, but that's gonna be my call for part 2. I'm pretty sure she's evil because she gave that really evil look there at the end of the movie. She's not happy. Something's going on. And all that being said, I'm gonna give Dune Part 1 a 7 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. Let me know what you think of Dune Part 1 in the comments. Are you excited for Dune Part 2? Are you going to see Dune Part 2 at the early screenings this weekend? Are you waiting for next week? Let me know all of that below in the comments, and I will see you all on the next one.